But before I move on to high school, the principals of middle school at that time, there were the two guys. There was Mr. Giamo and Mr. O'Connell. It was Jeremy and Tom. We called them Tom and Jerry. Now, Mr. O'Connell was this old school Irish guy. They were both huge, like tall guys to us, you know. Mr. O'Connell was always very nice to me, but he had that Irish temper thing where, like, one minute he's really nice to you, and literally a second later he'll flip a switch and start screaming at you and turn red and like clutch his chest and stuff. And Mr. Giamo, now he was a different sort. He was just a dick. Now looking back, I understand kind of why he was a dick, but oh, he was old school, man, and he would one time he finally had enough and he just said, "Michael, you're staying after school today." And he called my mother and she came in and they searched my locker for explosives. And of course, luckily for me, my locker was a pigsty and I had papers piled up high, so they couldn't even find the box of matches and cigarettes that I had in there. But in high school, the principal that I had, the assistant principal, Mr. Levine, was actually a really good guy. And in fact, in Hopog, I had a lot of great teachers too, in middle school and in high school. Like some of the best teachers I ever had were there. College, things change. You know, the passion and is not quite there with professors as it is with high school and middle school teachers. But anyway, so Mr. Levine, who had a sensitive side, would call me in his office pretty much every day. In fact,
Let it out.
I think sorry. I think I set like a world record of being included in the morning announcements in school for like years straight. So every morning they do the morning announcement and say, "Will the following students please report to the main office?" Michael Rocco. It was pretty much every day for a while. But Mr. Levine I would go to his office and he'd just sit there and he'd level with me. He'd say, "Listen, Michael, the next time your friends tell you to cut class and hang out in the courtyard, just tell them, fuck you." Now, at 14 and 15, that was amazing. This guy, this respectable man of stature, right, of high stature, he was cursing. It was the coolest thing. Eventually I did listen to him. By 10th grade, I turned everything around. I was getting straight A's, and I actually enjoyed the feeling of accomplishment. And I was,
Really?
wow, what self-esteem? What's that? Like,
Who
I'm
knew?
impressing my teachers? Oh, wow, that feels good. But until that point, we still have to get through freshman year where I ended up getting 1 credit at the end of the year for one class. But anyway, so every time I saw Mr. Levine after that day, I'd see him in the main office and say, "Hey, Mr. Levine, fuck you." And he would be like, "Shh, stop, stop, stop." And I think he actually got fired, from what I understand. He was like fired or something, and it was probably my fault somehow. And I think a year or two ago, we were in the city. We were coming back from like a Broadway play or whatever it was. It was late at night. We were on the train, and I saw him, Mr. Levine. I saw him, and I think he noticed me too. I didn't say anything to him, but he was sitting on the train, and he was in work clothes, and he had a little satchel, and I felt so bad, you know? Because of course they would have fired him. He actually cared, you know? He really cared about the hard cases, you know? And I wasn't a bad kid. Yeah, I blew up everything and you know, and, um, and I had a certain group of friends. It got bad for a while. A certain group of friends. Now, some kids are just juvenile delinquents, right? And going through their phases like I was. And then there are other kids who are just bad seeds. You know, and there was one group of friends who they were the ones who the motorheads who had all the dirt bikes and the quads, and we would have BB gun wars in the woods. We would shoot each other,
Oh, good.
and they would skin animals. They would shoot and kill raccoons and squirrels and skin them
Ew, you
and nail them
freak.
to their walls. These were my friends. You know? And I was involved with this crap for a while, you know, and I guess they were the badasses. They were the tough guys. And back then, in the early 90s, kids looked different, didn't they, right? Even earlier than that. Today's kids, you know, they look like kids, right? But back then, at least to me, some of these seniors were like 21, and they were like 7 feet tall, and they had leather biker jackets and full beards and glasses, and they were scary dudes. And they liked me. So what do? You start hanging out with them, and you blow things up, and people call the cops on you, and